Hey, Southern Nevada, let's talk about your tap water. Despite its hard, mineral-rich taste, your water meets or surpasses all federal Safe Drinking Water Act standards, so don't confuse hard water with its quality. Sourced from the Rocky Mountains, your water is analyzed more than 300,000 times a year. It's treated and monitored 24/7 by a team of technical experts. So get all the facts about your tap water at snwa.com. SNWA is a not-for-profit water agency. With all the rain this winter, the wildflower forecast is looking pretty good. But will it be a superbloom? And what actually even counts as a superbloom anyhow? Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we get some answers from Dr. Naomi Fraga, Director of Conservation Programs at California Botanic Garden. She tells us what makes a superbloom possible in our harsh desert climate and the best spots for wildflower viewing in the Mojave this spring. It's Tuesday, March 3rd. I'm Sonja Cho Swanson, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. So, Dr. Fraga, are we getting a superbloom in spring 2026? What's the deal on this?
Yeah, I think it depends on how we want to define superbloom. What is a superbloom, right?
Yeah, what is a superbloom?
Yeah, I think that's the $10,000 question. We've seen undisputable superblooms in the past, especially in Death Valley National Park in 2016 and in 2005. In those years, there was, record rainfall, perhaps 200 to 300% above average annual rainfall. And in those years, the flowers were carpeting vast swaths of land, across the valley floor.
Yeah.
It's almost like unavoidable. And this year, it's a very spectacular wildflower year. It's amazing. But it's more concentrated in specific areas. And it's not uniformly across the Mojave Desert or even within Death Valley National Park. It's really relegated to certain sites. So, I just drove through the other day and there was definitely really incredible showy displays. Just the vibrancy was amazing.
People so it's already starting.
It's happening now. People are out there enjoying the bloom. And when you're in those patches, it absolutely feels like you would look at that and say, this is a super bloom. This is magnificent. But in terms of it being more of a widespread regional phenomenon that, kind of reaches that same level as 2016 and 2005, we didn't have that same level of rainfall. Okay.
So on the Fraga scale of flowers, this is an official scientific scale now that we're inventing in this very moment. And 10 is like the most mind-blowing super bloom that has ever existed. And 1 is like a total womp womp. Where are we in 2026?
I'm going to say a 7.8.
Okay.
7.8. Right. It's strong. It's solid.
Go nature.
I don't know.
All right.
I was out there. I saw a lot of diversity. I saw incredible wildflowers. I felt like my cup was filled. I felt incredible amounts of joy. It's definitely the kinds of displays where people are forced to see that the desert is alive, that it is a vibrant, living place and you can't deny it.
But why do you think that people are just so intensely hoping that any little patch of flowers could actually be a super bloom? I mean, there's something about the term, the word itself, that feels like special and magical, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there is this urge or a real desire to see wildflowers because, across many years in the past decade, we've had really significant drought where we've seen almost no flowers at all. And in fact, in some of these areas where we're seeing wildflowers, those wildflowers are growing right next to dead creosote bush.
Yeah, and these are like the hardiest of the hardy plants. Those are the real tough it out plants.
Right. But this was down in Death Valley near, like below 100-foot sea level.
Okay.
So this is really, you're at the extreme edge of what plant life can survive in the summertime. And it was excessively hot. Every summer we're having record-breaking temperatures. We're having severe drought. And some of those years with severe drought, we're not even seeing any germination at all. And so the fact that we're getting wildflowers at all feels to some degree like really special and magnificent, right? And
Yeah.
so I kind of worry or think about what abundance looks like in the future, and our shifting baseline in
Hmm.
terms of like what was observed in the past,
Mm-hmm.
what would qualify, quote unquote, for a super bloom in the past, and what, how we might reset our barometer based
Mm-hmm.
on changing climate conditions.
Is the era of super blooms over? Have we like climate changed ourselves out of super blooms?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so at
Okay.
all. I think that one of the things that we can expect in a changing climate is I've heard some people term it weather whiplash or
Oh.
climate chaos,
Huh.
where we go between these extremes. So we had extreme drought, and then we might have years of really incredible rainfall, such that we maybe the super blooms are even more greatly amplified in
Hmm.
certain years, but maybe the duration or the time between them becomes longer or more erratic. And it might go between like extreme, seemingly catastrophic drought to just like an abundance, right, of rain
Hmm.
and wildflowers.
Hmm. Oh, that's so wild. I mean, I'm excited for those boom years, but it seems like a really boom bust cycle is probably not
Hmm.
as healthy for the ecosystem. Am I wrong about that?
Well, it's certainly, I think it matters more to the shrubs, like the perennial plants, the plants that are above ground all year round, because they're being subjected to these really different extremes, right, between
Mm-hmm.
years. Whereas these annual plants, they have some really interesting and unique adaptations that allow them
Hmm.
to withstand these changing weather conditions.
Okay.
So, the wildflowers that are so sought after that people are chasing are annual plants. So they complete their life cycle within 1 year. So
Mm-hmm.
they germinate at the onset of the first rains. So we got some really excellent rains around Christmas, right? And
Mm-hmm.
New Year. So a lot of these seedlings, that's when they germinated. That's what they went from seed to seedling in
Okay.
that span of time. And
So it's the
then
right
they'll
amount of rain at the right time as well.
Mhm. Right.
Okay.
The right amount of rain at the right time. So we want the rain to come in the colder months. So like in November, December, January.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that combination of cool and wet that triggers a lot of these plants to germinate.
Okay.
So you have germination happening, let's say in late December, January. And now we have plants that are in flower. And what we're only at, so they kind of raced along their life cycle quite quick from early January to late February. They're in flower and they're flowering right now. And the bees are buzzing and they're getting
Hmm.
pollination and reproduction is happening. And so these seeds might mature in the month of March and April.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the seed matures, the plant kind of completed its life cycle. It's kind of doesn't have much reason to exist anymore. And it has a whole set of adaptations to avoid drought. So we know it starts to get
Okay.
a lot warmer and drier in April and May.
Yeah.
So their strategy for dealing with drought is to just not be present,
You mean to die,
during the
basically. They're just
to
like, I'm out.
die.
Peace.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm out. I'm done.
Okay. Okay.
And so then their offspring, the next
Uh-huh.
generation, is living in the soil as a seed, waiting
Oh.
for that next time when they might even wait. They might like that seed that's born this year.
Uh-huh.
Let's say next year we get really significant rain. Those seeds probably still won't germinate.
Huh.
They might just like kind of hedge their bets and be like, "Yeah, I was just born last year.
Oh.
I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait a little bit longer." And so these seeds can live in the soil for many years, potentially several decades.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
And
Wait, what?
yeah,
In
so
decades? Wait, what's okay? I want to go down to the nitty gritty here because this is fascinating. So, first of all, my first thought is like, this makes me think about two types of people in Las Vegas. The creosotes who like tough it out, are here all summer, and they're like, I'm gonna let the sun weather and leather my skin to like extreme toughness. And then there's like the little like, annual pretty flower plants who are like, I gotta get out of here every summer. Like there are little snowbirds, right? Um,
right.
that's my first observation. Okay, so there's a few different strategies for surviving here. I get it. But then you're telling me that the annual plants are maybe like a little bit more long-lived than we
Mhm.
thought, What's happening in the soil?
Yeah, so it's kind of like those snowbirds who are kind of like, I'm out in the
Yeah.
summertime. They're not really out. They didn't leave. What they did is they turned on the air conditioning and they hunkered down, like,
Okay. Okay.
in their apartment or their house or
Yeah.
whatever. They just, I'm like, or they were like, I'm going to take a nap. I'm just going to
Okay.
like
But for like
rest out the
decades.
summer, but for like decades. And
Wow.
so they go into this kind of low metabolic phase. They kind of like decrease their
Yeah.
breathing, their respiration,
That's
and
what I do in the
they
summertime, by the way.
mhm.
Yes.
Right,
AC,
they
low
go into
metabolic phase.
hibernation
Yeah.
essentially. Like we think about the bears headed into the
Yeah.
cave and was sleeping out winter. Well,
Yeah.
these plants do that in the summer, and then they might do that for multiple years. They might do
Oh.
that for a decade or more.
Don't miss the return of New York's famed Gilbert and Sullivan Players to Las Vegas at the UNLV Performing Arts Center on Friday, March 6th at 7:30 p.m. The New York Times calls their production of The Mikado a comic gem. This version features characters from Victorian London's D'Oyly Carte Opera Company, presented in their imagined locale of Titipu, inspired by the art and architecture of Japan. The heart of the tale is a love story, but throw in a love triangle and the escapades ensue. And this production isn't your parents' version of The Mikado. This interpretation premiered in New York in 2017, and it represents a lot of work between the players and the Asian American theatrical community, the result of people listening to each other and working through problems and differences. The production starkly contrasts with historical treatments of The Mikado in several ways. For example, an original prologue gives the audience context for the work, highlighting Gilbert's influences from Japan. Tickets are selling fast, so get yours today at unlv.edu/PAC.
Hi, I'm David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, a podcast network that includes this show you're listening to, and also 12 other CityCasts in 12 other cities. And each one knows their city as well as your local team knows yours. So isn't it time we connected them? Don't you want to know how they're tackling their bike lane problems and housing challenges and sidewalk dog poop crises? That's why I'm hosting a new podcast called Your City Could Be Better. Because it could be. Every week, I'll chat with a different host in our CityCast network about what their cities are doing right and wrong, the weird things they're trying, and the surprising successes, so that we can all learn how to make our cities a little bit better. Listen to Your City Could Be Better on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
So a soil seed bank.
Okay.
This is the great diversity of seeds, the stores of seeds that are built up in the soil.
Mm-hmm.
And all the plants that are blooming now, they were just hanging out in the soil waiting to germinate. And here they are. And their offspring, they might not see the light of day again, and become like a fully mature plant in, 20, 30 years from now. So let's just take the desert gold plant. That's one of the big wildflowers that's blooming right now in Death Valley.
Okay.
All those individuals that are flowering now, like their mothers could have bloomed in a 1990 super bloom or in the 1980s or in, 2005. And so it's all these different sort of generations coming together, and then they have a chance to cross-pollinate. And that's just a really tremendous adaptation because you have all that genetic diversity, right? Because you have all these different generations kind of coming up together, and then they cross-pollinate, and then they introduce a whole new generation of seed laid down into the soil seed bank.
Oh my gosh. That is blowing my mind right now, by the way, that it's not just about geographic diversity, it's also diversity across time.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Wow.
Yeah. It's amazing. And these plants have all these different strategies for living in such an extreme environment. And we think of these wildflowers as being quite delicate, and they are delicate. Well, they're fragile and kind of, it's amazing to see such fragile beauty in a harsh landscape. And I think that's one of the attractive things about the super bloom is that you see this such delicate, just, all the colors and seemingly, just very fragile little creatures. But in this place that is known for like killing people with its,
Yeah.
weather.
Literally
conditions.
Death Valley. Literally called Death Valley.
Right.
What is the oldest seed that's ever germinated? Do we know like how like long seeds can be, I guess, technically alive?
Yes, we
Are
do.
seeds alive?
Yes, they're alive.
Okay.
Seeds are alive. They are living beings. They're a plant in a different phase, right?
Okay.
So they are whole plants. They have everything, all the components to make a whole green plant. And they're just in this dormant phase. So there have been date palms that have been unearthed. Date seeds of a date palm that have been unearthed from a tomb that they got to germinate. Thousands of years old, they were able to germinate it.
Wow.
There was another seed that they found like in the tundra. And they had to do some kind of lab work to get that seed to germinate. I think they had to take out the embryo and do some special work with it. But I forget, that one was like very old. It was like many thousands of years old.
Wow. Kind of Jurassic Parked that one.
Right. But then in terms of more like contemporary, people have done studies looking at seed longevity. And there are lots of studies taking place where people have stored seeds since like the 1930s, and then they take a different lot out every 10 years and try to germinate them and see if the seeds are still alive. And in some of these experiments, these seeds that were stored in the 1930s are definitely still alive and have a lot of germination. And the main thing they controlled for is humidity. So they made sure that the seeds were in a kind of a sealed environment where humidity wasn't fluctuating. And then where I work at the California Botanic Garden, we maintain a seed bank and we do germination tests. Every, we first start out like we store the seed. At the first year, we do germination tests, then at year 5, then at year 10, and then after that, every 10 years. And some of our older seed we started this in the 1990s. And there are many seeds that are still doing very, very well that were stored from the 1990s.
Wow.
And the main thing we control for is like just making sure that the seeds are dry and cold, and that can really help them extend their life for a very long time.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it just gets me thinking about how when you're walking out in the desert and you don't see anything, you think that this is just dry earth, that it's dry, dead earth. There's actually so much life beneath your feet just waiting to spring forward. So when you think about all those desert construction projects, I mean, they're unearthing and really emptying that seed bank.
Yeah. And it's not really replaceable. You can't just like dig up the seed bank and plop it somewhere else. And, once you've disrupted that seed bank, it's not really set up to kind of restore itself. And those seeds, we think about the seeds making new plants, but those seeds are also nutrition for a great diversity of wildlife. There's so many little organisms that feast on those seeds. And so it's not only a time for the plants to replenish their populations, but it's also a time where desert wildlife can, enjoy in the splendor of the desert and feed themselves.
All right. So I want to get your insider tips because you have done the work. You've gone flower scouting over the weekend, and you actually have a flower tour coming up. You're leading a wildflower tour of the Amargosa Basin. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm leading a wildflower tour in Death Valley, essentially, in the Amargosa River Basin. So Death Valley is actually the terminus of this incredible river, the Amargosa River. It travels all the way from its headwaters near Beatty, Nevada, all the way down through Ash Meadows, and then it makes kind of a U-turn out. If some folks might be familiar with Dumont Dunes, it's a popular off-highway recreation area. Right around there, it's headed south all that way, and then right at Dumont Dunes, it makes a U-turn and starts heading back north. And then the end of the river is Badwater Basin, the lowest point in North America. Below sea level.
So you've been scouting out some spots. What are your predictions, or what you're already seeing maybe, for what the best wildflower viewing spots are going to be this spring?
Yeah, I did a big old loop around Death Valley National Park, and definitely the southern end of the park is looking really good right now. I would
Hmm.
say if people are looking at heading out to see the big displays of desert gold, they really should be heading out in the next couple weeks before mid-March because it's already peaked. It's a little bit past its peak, but there's still plenty of flowers around, and
Okay.
people can really see some of the big displays south of Badwater Basin and down to like an area called Ashford Mill.
Okay. And that's for the desert gold.
Yeah, desert gold and sand verbena and primrose plants.
Oh,
Desert
yeah.
primrose, evening
Hmm.
primrose are down there.
Do we see flowers kind of come in waves? Is that like the idea that different flowers will be blooming at different times?
Yes, sometimes there are certain flowers that might come on the earlier side that are sort of, the harbingers of spring, like, oh, I'm seeing this flower, spring
Uh-huh.
is starting. And
Uh-huh.
then there are flowers that kind of close out the season that tell
Okay.
you spring is about to end. Some of those flowers that close out the season include like the desert calico, which is a
Hmm.
small, short little guy, but very, very sweet, beautiful flower in the phlox family. And another area I would say that is good to visit is just the highway out of Shoshone towards Badwater Basin.
Okay.
So that is Highway 178, California State Highway 178, headed towards Ashford Mill from Shoshone. That area, I think, as things warm up, things will really start to perk up there because it's a little bit higher elevation.
Nice. And then are there any spots like really close to Las Vegas where people can kind of catch a glimpse if they can't make it all the way out? Do you have any recommendations a little closer to the city?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of great areas for plants all around the Spring Mountains,
Hmm.
and Red Rock Canyon Recreation Area is going to have great displays as well. I haven't particularly scouted around those sites, but I know that there has been germination in some of those areas, and the desert just has really great flowers.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the same species, a lot of the same kinds of plants will occur in Death Valley National Park and these other areas in the desert.
Do you have a favorite? Is it hard to pick a favorite, but can you identify a favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I study a group of plants called monkey flowers.
Ooh.
Yeah, and there is a couple of desert monkey flowers that are quite special to see in the desert. One is Bigelow's monkey flower. Its
Okay.
scientific name is Diplochus bigelovii,
Uh-huh.
and it's a pink monkey flower that grows in gravelly washes. It's quite common in desert locations.
Wow.
And it's so cute. It's just very adorable
Oh
little
my gosh, it's
plant.
such a
They're
I'm Googling it right now. It's such a vibrant shade of like fuchsia.
Yeah,
Like the kind of color
like
you're like, how does
magenta
this
fuchsia
Yeah. How does this exist? Wow.
with a little yellow in the center
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. I see why it's your favorite.
Yeah, it's a sweetie.
Well, okay, if people are going to go out and see these flowers, what can they do to make sure that they're being responsible? Because everyone wants a selfie that looks really cute, surrounded by nature's abundance. How can they do it to ensure that those future generations of flowers will exist?
Yeah, there's several things that people can do and keep in mind when they're going into natural areas. One, I'm going to recommend if you go out hiking a lot in nature, it's always good to check your shoes and clean them out before you head out, right? This
Hmm.
is one way that weedy plants, like non-native weedy species, get spread around is from us trekking it in on our shoes.
Oh, okay.
So before you head out, just clean out your shoes.
Uh-huh.
Once you're out there, you want to be very respectful of the plants, and it's very easy to accidentally trample them.
Mhm.
In Death Valley area and some of these wildflower viewing areas, there's not necessarily designated trails. And so people are just getting out roadside and they're kind of, walking into the flowers to get their photograph. There is space between the flowers, so you can be very careful to not trample them. But I was out there this weekend and I saw several flowers that were broken and
Oh,
trampled. And yeah, and
yeah.
I'm sure people aren't intentionally, trying to trample on the plants. But if you're not attuned to
Yeah.
just being, kind of tiptoeing around the plants, just make sure you don't step on them. When you're in an area, some areas you shouldn't be going off trail.
Mhm.
So definitely stay on trails and
Okay.
definitely never pick the flowers ever, ever.
Which is against the law, right? In
Yeah,
in
it is.
national parks, do not pick the
Right.
plants. And, just even thinking biologically, right? Like one trampled plant or one picked plant is how many dozens of seeds that don't get to germinate and become plants someday in the future, right?
Exactly. So every plant represents the next generation. It's going to mother the next generation of wildflowers. And so if you think about a sunflower, each sunflower is actually many flowers in that sunflower. That's not one flower. That's actually a composite of potentially 100 flowers. And so every plant could make hundreds of seeds. And so then, if you pick some or trample on them, and then all the other thousands of visitors visiting do the same, we could really have an actual impact on the future generations. We want to make sure to avoid that.
Yes. Listen up, folks. We want that super bloom. It's coming for us. Well, I thought this was going to be a conversation about flowers. It ended up being a conversation about so much more. Dr. Fraga, thank you so much for joining us on CityCast Las Vegas today.
No, it was really fun. Thank you for having me.
And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, go tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. Don't forget you can support this show and get some great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Take care.